So is haptics the missing link in immersive tech? It's a great question. And looking at the AR, VR world, a lot of effort has been put into the hardware. And it's natural. We need to get processing power, latency and display quality up to a particular level when it delivers on the experience. But in my view, technology is not enough. So I think if you talk about design principles or ambitions, I think our ambition in this case should be magic. And here's my own personal recipe for magic. It's got 3 ingredients, and starting with the first one, extraordinary content. As Paul mentioned earlier, the content ecosystem is starting to experiment and play with VR. We're getting some fantastic content out in various channels where people can experience the power of the medium. And it is powerful when you actually get them, when you actually do it. But let's be honest, it's still clunky, you're still tethered, you still need kit, it's still heavy. But it's clear, if you look at roadmaps, you can see from the hardware side, they're going to get there, they're going to solve it. It's going to be lightweight, it's going to be easy, it's going to be cheap, sooner or later. But content is also very interesting. I think Paul talked about 360 video. In my view, if you're looking at early indicators of trending VR content, I think 360 video is one of the things to watch. And if you go on YouTube, you can actually filter and get a channel for 360 videos. You can split it into categories. And what you find is it's extraordinary stuff. It's very much, in terms of top rating, it's extraordinary experiences. Skydiving, roller coasters trend very high. And there are a few other things, empathetic stories, going to places you can't go. Obviously, whether it's going to an Ebola area or going to a Syrian war zone, if you can go there in VR and really see for yourself, you can build empathy in a way that no one has ever managed before. It's a fantastic empathy machine. Shared experience is another one that I think is very, very important. If you observe the coming generation, and I think about my own children who are sort of early teens, they sit on multi-devices, and you can look at, okay, they're all glued to screens, yes, but they are together. And they're together in ways that we weren't when I grew up. They are sort of mentally together, even if they're not physically together. It's multiplayers, it's voice channels, it's multiplayer chat windows while you're playing Fortnite. And we may have our own views as parents and observing this, but I think our parents had views on us when we grew up. I think it's something that we can't stop. I think it's a matter of creating safe and great creative environments for those kind of experiences. But it's very clear that social plays a role. They want to be together. Whatever they're playing, it becomes a team game. And I think a very interesting player to watch in this space, obviously in the news today for other reasons, is Facebook. But I can recommend you, if you haven't already, go to YouTube, check Oculus Connect video clips, check what Facebook is doing with Spaces. Very, very interesting things where you actually can get that multiplayer experience in VR. You can see your friends. So I think shared experiences, never forget that. If we want to make something mass market and really ubiquitous, it has to be shared. And that brings us to presence. Presence is this elusive thing that, a bit like when you're listening to a great story, you're sitting there and all of a sudden the world disappears. You're in that story. Your brain starts to be a participant in the story, filling in the blanks. You build this mental world around the story and you're there. It's hard to define it. It requires a lot of different senses and a lot of imagination. So I think presence is the one that's least explored and least clear in terms of roadmap. So a few people have elaborated on this. In this case, the head of marketing at AMD, talking about the first rule of VR, don't break the presence. And that's the piece of the magic when, if you put your virtual hand through a virtual object and you realize actually it's not there, it just goes straight through. It's not real. You're breaking the magic. And that's a no-no. And that's a big danger for the sector. So we've got to fix that. And I think moving to the importance of touch. I don't know if any of you have come across Ian Waterman before. If you Google Ian Waterman and the sense of touch, you'll find a wealth of content online. It's a fantastic story, even though it's terrifying for Ian. When he was 19, he was hit by a spell of flu that hit his nervous system. And he woke up one day and had lost the sense of touch. Not just in a pins and needles sense, where you sort of could feel your hands a bit, completely, from the neck down, which meant that if he closed his eyes, he wouldn't know if he was standing up or sitting down, which is terrifying. Imagine, you just don't know where your body is. So there's actually a BBC production called The Man Who Lost His Body. Can recommend you to look that up. It's a very interesting story. And it's been the subject of a lot of research as well. What's interesting was that doctors predicted that he would have to be in a wheelchair his whole life. But using his sense of sight, he gradually regained control of his body and his environment. But he still struggles. If he closes his eyes, he doesn't know where his body is. So the parallel to VR is that if you look at the VR solutions today, you typically don't see your own body. You don't have hand tracking or an avatar. There are a lot of players who are working on that, of course, but it's still quite clunky with head-mounted tracking and things like that. It will be solved, but I think it just highlights the importance of actually not just seeing that you're there, but also feeling that you're there. Because if you don't, a lot of things break. And it's quite natural. Touch is actually one of our senses that are developed the very earliest. Already before we're born, we have a sense of touch. We perceive the world around us through the sense of touch. And it's not just feeling something on the skin. There are a lot of different details to haptics, as we call it, the sense of touch. I'm not going to go into detail about that today, but it's a fascinating topic if you ever have time on your hands. So it's really central to how we explore the world and how we navigate the world, even as adults. It's actually a very subconscious thing, as we saw with Ian. It's something that we just take for granted, and we can only realize it when it's gone. And it's tricky because you can close your eyes and you can imagine what it's like not to have sight, but it's really hard to switch off your sense of touch and imagine what that's like. So it's also very symbolic. I think anyone who's in storytelling or is a movie buff will recognize this one. This is when human meets good-natured alien and connects. So touch is also a language of communication. It's a method of communicating. It's a way to actually express emotion, affection, all sorts of things that matter in real life. But I think coming back to where the industry is, I think most of us here probably have experienced haptics through our smartphones. When you have a vibrate, you switch off the ringer, you can still feel that someone is calling. That's quite a good feature. If you have a touch screen, maybe you like to have the haptic feedback, that you get a little confirmation. But in VR, this is really the best that anyone has today in volume production, which means you want to do Google Tilt Brush, which is an amazing, colorful, creative app. Free of charge, you can take a tilt brush and you can paint anything. Amazing. But if you think about it, your brush is actually a piece of plastic where you press a button to select different brush sizes. That is not intuitive. Tech is a barrier between us and the experience. And I think that's something that has to go across the whole ecosystem. Tech should go away. That's where magic comes in. The more intuitive it is, the more natural it is, the more magical it is. So how can we get these gadgets to go away? It's tricky, because at the moment, if you want any haptic feedback, if you want to open a door or click a button in a VR world, you have to have one of these plastic things and press a button. It's like PlayStation. X, Y, A, B, C. It's complicated, at least for me. My children might disagree. But anyway, I think anyone can agree that this is a barrier to user experience and to the magic. So that brings us to ultrasonic haptics, or mid-air haptics, as we call it. And I'm fortunate to work with a brilliant team in Bristol. We have a team in Palo Alto as well. And this is a homegrown piece of IP, if you will. It comes from the University of Bristol originally and became a company 4 years ago. And in essence, what we can do is we can put the sense of touch into mid-air in real time through ultrasound, which means we can draw 3D objects. We can create buttons to click. We can create very mundane objects like a surface or a sphere or any kind of object. But we can also create the magical. In this case, it's a It's a VR spells demo that we've taken to various conferences where you can be an apprentice wizard and you can cast spells, like in this case electricity or fireballs, and you can really feel the fire going through your fingers, hitting objects, and you destroy things essentially, which people tend to like. So if you want to try that, please come and see us in any upcoming events or come to Bristol. We'd love to see you. But really, coming back to magic, I think this is the opportunity to take technology away, bring it back to a natural interface where we can interact with our bodies in virtual reality. So with that, I think we should move to what people say. And this are a few statements from a recent conference in San Francisco. I don't know if any one of you have been to GDC. It's the biggest geek party in the world, where the game developer conference, where everyone in gaming and increasingly AR and VR and location-based entertainment are converging on San Francisco and looking at the latest stuff. So let's see what people thought about mid-air haptics.
I think this is a really cool product. I'm blown away by how awesome this works. I can't wait to see more applications of this.
It's very cool, it's very tingly, that's for sure. Definitely for kinetic users if you're a little tired of the controller or want something different than your typical VR controllers as well. I don't know, it's really fun. The sensation is awesome.
I absolutely love this. It's so real and I can feel anything in my hand. Yeah, I like it. I really like it.
It's the first thing I've seen at the show. That's really amazed me. It's impressive. Incredible.
Wow, that's all I can say. It's like a form of magic. It's unbelievable. You know, I was touching things in my hand, but nothing was there. So I don't know how to do it. It's crazy.
Amazing, and I love being able to feel things and experience things and touch things and do spells. I can't wait till it's a full room experience.
So that's all from me today. Very happy to take any questions, but thank you very much for listening.